Hello, this is Don Mitchell. Welcome back to learning about the 2000% Solution, the book that explains how to accomplish at least 20 times more with the same or less time, effort, and resources. Now, wouldn't that be nice? In this video, I'll be discussing Chapter 4, Eliminate the Misconception Stall. So you might be wondering what the misconception stall is and how that's different from the disbelief stall that I discussed in Chapter 3. A disbelief is based on something that was once true but is no longer true now, while as a misconception was never true. It's basically a bad assumption, something that either hasn't been tested or if it was tested, the lessons of that test had long been forgotten. So you might ask yourself, well, how could an organization, how could a business, or how could an individual possibly operate for long periods of time, possibly even decades, based on false assumptions or false beliefs? Well, that's actually easier to understand than I think you might realize. Imagine that there are three alternatives available in a given situation. And one of the alternatives is extremely positive. In other words, things get a lot better. The second alternative is moderately positive. Things move along, improving at a steady pace. And the third alternative is one whereby things improve, but at a slow pace. Well, as you can imagine in this situation, regardless of which path you follow, things will improve. And of course, when things are improving, many people will be quite satisfied with that, feeling like, well, I'm doing a good job. Things are improving. Not realizing that there, in fact, was no possibility that things could have gotten worse. Yet, in fact, if the lesser two of the three alternatives are being pursued rather than the best one, the results are vastly far more below what could be accomplished than what had happened, and in fact represent a huge reduction in what the potential rewards are from that situation. However, since no one has experienced that, and if they haven't actually looked around to see the experience of what other people are accomplishing, it may not occur to them that they have really had this issue in this case. Let me see if I can give you an example in modern medicine. People are fond of pointing out that medicine in the United States, medical care costs a great deal more than in most any other country. And immediately, if you bring up that point, people will, point to reasons why that might be the case. That incomes are higher in the United States, so you have to pay higher salaries. That medical facilities are more likely to have the latest equipment, which is quite expensive, and also that the standard of care is high. Well, those are all true, as far as they go, but obviously one thing that could be tested that often isn't being tested is how are they doing compared to other people? Well, when you make such comparisons, you find that the results don't look nearly so good. For example, let's look at cataract surgery. Now, as recently as 30 years ago, cataract surgery in the United States cost typically about $4,000 per eye. And eyes were operated on separate occasions in case an error was made that the patient wouldn't lose sight. In other words, so that a separate occasion would be a chance to do the right thing with the other eye, even though both eyes probably were going to need to have cataracts removed. And you might say to yourself, well, then if it was $4,000 30 years ago, well, it must be $10,000 today. Well, in fact, it isn't. In fact, the cost is pretty similar in the United States. You might say, wow, those doctors are doing a good job. Well, maybe they are, maybe they aren't. Let's look a little further into the facts. First thing that we might discuss is what was the standard of living like for doctors who did cataract surgery 30 years ago? Well, it was very, very good. They drove the latest cars. They didn't work long hours. And they had a pretty relaxed look on their faces at all times. So in other words, they were being very well paid for what they were doing. So what happened in the meantime? Well, one thing that happened was a new technology came along, which means that you can actually do a better cataract surgery at a lot less cost. So it was an invention of a better method that made the improvement, not anything that the average eye surgeon did or the average hospital did. Okay, so then we might say, well, still, that's good, Don. I mean, somebody somewhere did something innovative. Well, the next time you or your insurance company is about to pay $3,000 or $4,000 to have a cataract removed, consider the fact that there is a large chain of eye surgeries in the nation of India that performs the same surgery for about, are you ready? $35 an eye. And you might say, well, yeah, but they probably use rusty instruments and the results probably aren't very good. Well, there have been tests run to actually check these things. And the statistics point out that this small chain, the Aravind, Aravind chain in India, it's a nonprofit organization, actually has better results for its patients than do the average eye doctors in the United States, the ones who are part of this $3,000 operation. So what are some of the differences? Well, in the United States, the assumption is an eye doctor will do surgeries when a patient wants them. Now at Aravind, what they do is they specialize people in doing cataract surgeries so that the surgical team as well as the surgeon do a lot of surgeries. They might do thousands of surgeries in just a few years, more than an American surgeon might do in an entire career. So as a result, these surgeons get more experience. Well, if you get more experience, you do things better. Also, people in the United States like to pay high prices for things. So there's quite a few things that are required by law that the doctors have pushed forward. One of which is that there has to be only one patient in an operating room. Well, obviously we need sterility and we need care that we don't sort of mistreat one patient and result in the other. But clearly a surgeon and a surgical team can be much more efficient if they can just turn around, go to the next table where the next patient is waiting and start operating, rather than have to go through the whole procedure, maybe a half hour of getting the patient prepared before they can go to an operating room and do it. So in India, they have two patients in an operating room at a time. And again, they get perfectly good results, and I think the results have to speak for themselves in a case really like this. And if we go on, from that, we can also see other things, which is the lens that gets inserted in the eye in the American case is purchased from somebody who's trying to make as much money as possible from this. And these lenses sell for over $100. In other words, the lens itself, the thing that gets put in the eye, costs more than what Aravind costs to do the whole operation. Well, what's the difference? Well, Aravind makes their own lenses. Apparently, there's so much money in this that even without being one of the biggest lens makers in the world, you can make these things very inexpensively. And obviously, if in the process you want to make some improvements that enable you to do better surgery, you can do this more easily. So basically, what are a couple of differences between the American system and the Indian chain? Well, the first is that the Indian chain is trying to accomplish the most with the resources it has, because it's in a country where most people can't afford cataract surgery. So there are millions of blind people who simply need to have their cataracts taken off. And so if you can take whatever money is available to pay for that, be able to do more surgeries, that's a good thing to do. By contrast, in the United States, each person in the system is trying to make the maximum profit. The person who works on the surgical team is trying to make the highest hourly rate. The surgeon is trying to make the most per surgery and per hour. The hospital is trying to get the most per operating room, or if it's a surgical center, the surgical center, the same thing. The lens maker is trying to make the maximum profit from what they sell. And so there's a lot of inefficiency built in, and higher prices are absolutely necessary. Whereas somebody who tries to optimize this would come with a different conclusion. So you might say, well, why would there be two such large different results? Well, there is an assumption going on. The assumption is that a free market, which we have in the United States, is going to give you a better result at a lower price. Wrong. Okay, now I'm not suggesting that free market economics are always wrong, but they certainly are wrong in many more cases than people realize. And I think an important point for the future is that in providing a lot of services and a lot of products, it would make more sense for there to be nonprofit organizations who are aggressively devoted to serving as many people as possible, trying to provide those services and those products, rather than relying almost totally on profit-making individuals and organizations to do that, who are going to be so much more profit-oriented than they are going to be in delivering the best possible results. And the result is, if you start doing that, much like the Irvin case, you have the immense possibility that somebody can be 100 times more fruitful. Now, before we leave this example, I now have a further kicker point. Now, when I say it cost them $35, actually, I was a little bit unfair in saying that. They actually charge $35. Now, what if you can't pay $35? You're a poor Indian person. Well, they don't. They do those people for free. So what that means is that they're making such a large profit on the $35 an eye patient that will also pay for, one or more other patients. So probably the cost is much closer here to 10 or 15, dollars an eye. So if that's the case, then the Irvin people may be 200 or 300 times more effective in what they're doing before we look at the fact that clinical results are true. Now, lest you think that I'm making this up, you can check for yourself that for beginning a number of years ago, the British Health Service, so in other words, another place where they're interested in getting costs down, started flying people from England in the Atlantic Ocean to the nation of India, putting them up in hotels and taking them to Yerevan to get their eye cataracts done. And they do it for two reasons. First of all, even paying for the travel, the airfare, the hotel, the meals, and so forth, is still cheaper than doing it in England. But secondly, in fact, there are fewer infections, fewer bad results. So in fact, people get better health care. And of course, some people probably, delight in the fact that they get a chance to go to India. So what I want to basically say to you is that if there's anything about how you do business, how someone else does business, or a business that you could enter, or an activity that you could enter that hasn't been tested by doing it in a way whereby focusing on getting the maximum results would be the attention as opposed to the maximum profit, then I think there's a very, very good chance there's some really amazing opportunities to do there because there's a lot of sluggishness causing from people creeping along at these lower level paths that I talked about in the beginning, paths that never should have been followed really in the first place. And if you have been in the happy situation where you've been on one of these low-level paths, don't see that as heaven. In fact, see that as just a foretaste of what heaven really can be like, something much better, and go out and grasp that improvement. And I think that as you do, you'll have a sense of satisfaction, you'll have a sense of accomplishment, and a sense of really being fruitful that will transform your life in extremely powerful ways that will touch you and your family for generations to come. So thanks for listening. I hope this example has been interesting to you. The chapter itself has lots of great examples, which I'm sure you can relate to. I haven't touched on any of those, so enjoy them as you read them. So goodbye for now.